younger, I wanted to live my life ASAP.
Whatever you want to do. What kind of Thai food are you making?
Maybe fried rice, pot stickers, and maybe some chicken eggs.
Oh, pot stickers, huh? Shoots. Cool. Yeah, around an hour. Depends. We're doing feedbacks today, so we are live though. So, anyways, what's up, y'all? What's going on, guys? Yes, Toby did eat. Yes, he is eaten. He is fed. You can give him a treat though. Cool. What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode. Let's get it popping. Today is, so I think Tuesdays and Thursdays are probably the best days. Fridays are probably a little bit hard just because I got to do feedback for CGMA. And then Saturdays and Sundays is more CGMA. And then during the week, I'm probably going to be like tired from doing work. So Tuesdays and Thursdays are probably going to be the set time until I say otherwise. If you want later time, that's always a possibility as well. It just depends, you know what I mean? But anyways, in terms of today feedback, I'm just going to be doing studies until someone wants to send something in for a feedback. So what I have is I actually created a Dropbox, and I'll post it in here if this works. Let me see. Let me put this link again. Copy link address. So if I put the link in here, if you click on this link, actually no, shoot, maybe not that one. Well, it does work, but it has Facebook after it, and I don't know why it does that. So let me get a new one, actually. So I figured it out, actually. All I have to do is go to Files, File Requests, and then, oh shoot, where did I go there? There we go. Go to File Requests, and then Request Files, and then there we go. Yeah, let's call it feedback again. So if I hit next, there should be this link. So if you put this link in the chat, you will technically be able to add a file to that folder. It should work. So I already tested it with Michael, so it should work. So if you then do that, then what should happen is in my Twitch folder, there's a feedback thing in here, and these are the ones from the other day, which I'll delete right now, and then it should upload something to there. So it should be environment based. Michael just did a test right here with the character, but it should be environment based. Until then, and then if you do, you have to kind of like write something in the chat, so I understand that you put something in there, and then we'll talk about it, and then we'll go from there. But you do need to be present if we are going to do a feedback, out of respect, so don't throw something in there and then dip off. So yeah, cool? Cool. Alright. If there's any problems with the microphone, anything like that, let me know. What's up, TYZ? I don't know why Facebook doesn't show the text in my restream chat, which is really weird. So now I gotta have Facebook open. But in the meantime, let's just paint and hang out. I have some photos that I took from Kauai that I want to kind of maybe rip off of, maybe mixing it with this, and we're just gonna relax and chill in the meantime. So yeah, don't mind me. And I'm just making sure that everything is good to start painting. So life is good, life is easy right now, so I'm chilling. So let me move this over, and we're cool. And let me move my stream over. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. Editor, cool, there we go. I think we're good. Stream time, microphone seems good, monitor seems good. I think everything is what I need it to be. I just need to move everything over that I need to be moved over. Alright, where's the restream? And then where's the Facebook? Cool. Alright, painting. I did work on some prints today, actually. But it is what it is. So yeah, I do like this photo that I took while in Kauai, because I like that blue, actually. So I want to see what I can make from it. That blue is a very, very nice blue. And that dark blue on the corner of it is even nicer. Super, super nice blue. And then this one has a hint of this like nice blue and white. So I probably just need that. And then I'm wondering, that white right there is really, really cool. And I'm also really curious about some of these warmer tones right here, where it's like super, super saturated, and I really like that green. Mixed with this green right here, which is more, it's still on the warmer side, but I want to see if I can then mix in some cooler greens in here that kind of go a little bit more on that side. Is what I'm aiming to do, but no promises. And then right here, it gets like borderline hot. Super, super hot white kind of color, where it seems like it's like almost on fire, and that's pretty cool. So a lot of cool things there. But anyways, let's work that out. So looks like we have no one currently right now, so we're good. Twitch. Let me know if that doesn't show up. Let me see. Twitch. Let me log in. Shit. Sorry. Shit. Sorry. 2 seconds. 2 seconds. There you go. Alright, should be good. Can't seem to get restream is not working for me. Sorry. I put it in the Twitch. Did it not show up in the Twitch by any chance? If it didn't show up in the Twitch, then just message me on Facebook and then I'll do it there. Okay. Mr. T uploaded one of his works. Alright, I can't critique it. Just kidding. Let me finish this cloud thought first. Because I don't know where I was going with this, and then it's actually like when you zoom out, it actually looks like halfway decent, but then you zoom in and you're like, oh, it looks like ass. But I like those colors from there, and I wanted to paint something that represented that. So now I feel like I have to finish this thought because I'm like fully committed right now. But we will take a look in a couple seconds. I'm just probably simplifying this and spending way more time than I would like to when it comes regarding clouds, but I do like clouds, so I apologize. Alright, feedback. Well, while I'm doing this, why don't you tell me about the piece? Some things that you like about it, some things you don't like, or just in general, like your overall thoughts and just what you would like to do to try to improve it. The more I know about it, the better I feel like, because then I feel like I'm able to give you what I think might help based on what you're aiming for. So that always helps, yeah. Okay, let me zoom out here and let me kind of soften this guy up a little bit. As we begin to open up your file, and yeah, don't give me any viruses. Well, I have virus protection, but don't be that guy. Okay, let's see. So, today is Feedback Thursday, as you all may know. And with that, it requires some feedback. So, let's take a look here. I want to make sure, I'm not sure why Twitch isn't showing up things. Make sure of all platforms. Sometimes the chat doesn't work. So, let's open up this folder here. And if I go to feedback, I'm not seeing anything in the folder. So I wonder, okay, the personal project I'm working on called The Witch Trials. I wish I could see it. Why is it not working? Let's see here. If I click on this folder, let me see what happens. So give me a second here. I'm gonna click on the folder and make sure that it works. Choose from Dropbox. So upload. All right, let's see. It says done. Huh. Okay. I have no idea why that wouldn't be working. Let's see. Because he just uploaded a file and Twitch. Okay, let me. Oh, okay. I guess it is there. It's just taking a little bit. I don't know where. File requests feedback. Oh, it's in a different thing. Okay. It's right here. Gotcha. Okay, I'm a noob. For some reason, it didn't go where I wanted it to go. Cool. Alright, let's take a look. Oh, that's cool. That's interesting. So it's a witch trial, and you have... Okay. This is very interesting. I like the idea. I like how subtle like this stuff is. Probably gotta. I wish you maybe would have posted one without the noise, but I mean, regardless, it looks pretty cool. Huh. That's very interesting. So I'm curious on what you don't like about it. There are some things that might help, and then this is hard because this is going to be a vertical one, so usually I like to go more horizontal, more portrait, but I mean there is ways we can still mess with this. So while he's typing, I'm just kind of looking at like I'm gonna write out the elements that we have to work with because we don't have a lot of space. So in general, this always kind of makes like things a little bit harder just because you don't have that much space. So we have, this helps me kind of figure out some things if I am doing stuff. So we have the sword. We have, it looks like, I guess it looks like tombstones, and then we have rock. And it looks like we have mountains. Mountain, and then we have some layer of fog. So those are the elements that we have to work with. So right now we only have like 2 swords. We have, in terms of like foreground, middle ground, we only have like 1 set of like tombstones. We have 1 set of rocks, and we have like 1 set of mountains, and then like a set of fog. So I try to kind of like quantify it a little bit sometimes, and I'm wondering what we can do to achieve more depth, I guess is probably what I would assume you're aiming for. And so I would probably say, why don't we bump this up to like 3? So that way, a very, very easy flow here that you can have. I mean, I would imagine should be like 1, 2, and 3, like that. So I'm wondering if we just crop this off a little bit and maybe expand it on the left side. So like, let's do it this way. So I want to make sure I have the same amount of space here. And so I'm going to do this. Just so I feel like I have the same amount here. And I'm going to go black and white here just because it's a little bit easier. Okay, so knowing that I have like these are my elements, right, that I can use to make a painting. And so I guess our goal here that we're trying to achieve, if we're looking at it, I would imagine is probably scale, right? Because we want to show how big this thing is in depth. So scale, depth, and light, I would imagine, because everything else is relatively kind of cool, and you have this light that's kind of showing. So we could write scale, depth, light. And so in my mind, what I want to think about if I'm trying to do this is we've established what our elements are, and we've kind of established our goal. Now what can we do like graphically to kind of help make that happen? And so that's when I will begin to kind of start working some things out in placement. So what I try to do is make the simple shapes, and before I paint anything, I want to see if I can kind of move, scale, or rotate before I do any kind of like complex shapes. So what do I mean by that? So an example would be if I were to paint something here, and let's create a little bit of a gradation here, by the way, just for starters. No, sorry. Cool. If I were to paint this shape in here, and I'll use cool. I'll use, and let me use the same brush to erase, so I don't have to worry about things. So I don't want to make this too complicated. I just want to get the placement down. So I'm not really caring about all these little smaller shapes here. What I just want to know is how do these things sit in terms of an angle? Yeah, so if we were to break this down like so, and just let me know if this is like if this is working or not. Fernando, yes, you can. There is a link, and I will provide it for you that you can then put in some stuff.
Let's see. So today is Feedback Thursday, as you all
sorry.
know.
This is working or not. Let me unlive that. Sorry, I'm watching this on my other screen. So if someone can put it in the chat, that Dropbox link, that would be helpful. Maybe one of you guys can do that. Actually, maybe I just post it right here. Cool, actually good. There you go, in case you're looking to do that. All right, let me go back to what I was doing. And we're good to go. Cool. All right, so we have this element right here. That's one. All right, that's one of our swords. And then I'm just gonna flip it, to be honest. I'm not even gonna like try to really paint anything. Like I want to do as minimal painting as possible, like in this regard. And maybe I'll kind of make it a little bit more flatter, like that. But I will make it lighter, so that will be a thing. So we'll just go a little bit lighter. Cool. So we have that. We have this. And we do have a mountain, so let's put the mountain in there. And we'll make that a little bit lighter as well. Cool. So again, very graphic, but kind of important that we like figure some things out. And then once I figure out the composition, if I feel like I can't do anything else with it, that's when I would go in there and I would say, hey, I need to maybe edit or move or create a different shape, is what I'm thinking. That's kind of my thought process here. So I'm literally taking everything that you're breaking down here, and I'm like, okay, just one by one, maybe a little bit lighter. Was that darker? No. Sorry. Alright, that works. Cool. Alright, so we'll link that. And we'll put that behind that. And this will go behind that. Cool. There we go. One by one. We're kind of working this out in our mind. So I'm literally just breaking it down like piece by piece. And so once I get all the pieces down, my goal here is to figure out like where I want to move things proportionally. Just doing the idea of move, scale, and rotate. And so if I were to make a lighter value, that is going to be the moon. Right? We'll put that right there. So we'll talk about the idea of move, scale, rotate in a second. Behind this guy will then be this piece right here. And it looks like it doesn't really get any bigger. And we'll give it a little bit of a gradation so that way we don't have to worry about painting the same value like that. And then we'll actually take the same thing here and we'll work that out. So these are our shapes. So we have officially like made a composition based off of all of our elements that we just named. So I want to figure out now, how can I make this better? So the first thing I would do, again, only move, scale, rotate. Those are the things that I can do. I'm not gonna try to paint anything. I'm trying to move stuff around first. So if I take this guy, all right, this one's going off frame, so I don't want that one to go off frame for starters. So let's move that over. So I'm using the idea of moving first. This is before I figure out the detail, when I figure out the placement. The scale could probably go a little bit more, it can go inward more, maybe a little more skinnier, a little bit more down. Maybe it's kind of closer to the edge, but it's still in the full frame. So maybe this one, I do want to move it a little bit, like almost probably like creating a tangent maybe. That's what I'm thinking. So there's definitely no guarantee that this is going to work, but I'm trying not to paint. I'm painting right here because of this, that just annoys the hell out of me, but in theory, I don't want to be painting any kind of detail here. So I'm looking at that. So the next thing I would ask myself is like, well, do I want to maybe add another one? Because twos can kind of not be the greatest. So I'm wondering maybe if you want to add another one. So let's try that. So again, move, scale, rotate. In this case, the idea is duplicate. We're duplicating something. So let's duplicate it. Let's flip it. Let's make it smaller. Super, super small. Over here. Maybe it's kind of behind this guy right here. And again, just move, scale, rotate. Just like that. Again, sorry, this annoys the hell out of me that I made this little piece right here. Which, again, you probably shouldn't be doing. I'm just doing that because it annoys me. And we want to adjust the value so that way it's a little bit higher. So that looks interesting to me, right? I'm still keeping it simple at this point. I'm still trying to figure out like what's making it read better, and what's giving it like the amount of depth that I'm looking for, right? Because there's never like a clear-cut issue here. I look at the moon. Placement of the moon was kind of right here. And it's relatively small. So I'm wondering if the scale of that is of significant, you know what I mean? Like, is that important? So we are missing the clouds there, so I do want to put like a lighter value for the clouds. So let's actually do that. Because that is of significance. It does have kind of a simple shape. I'll blur that later, but we do want to think about how this reads. So maybe instead we want this to be bigger. Maybe by making the scale bigger, it creates like an interesting composition where maybe it highlights something, like it kind of connects us from here to there. So that could be something, or maybe we just push it more down so that way it's kind of interacting. So I'm kind of curious on where the placement of this is and how it's going to lead our eye to the piece, because you don't want it, this one's going directly above it, and so I'm wondering if moving it a little bit more inward is helpful, like something like there. So a part of me thinks, do I even need it, right? So then again, move, scale, rotate, and possibly delete. And right now, I think it's almost like distracting in a way, unless I can make it like bigger right there. But even then, like my first inclination is to want to start here, go there, and go there, and I don't know where this fits in all of that, personally. So that's the question. That's a design problem that I got to think about. So like when I'm figuring out a composition, this is where most of the work gets done, honestly. I got to figure out things here first before I go into all of this, because this is all easy. Like once you get this done, it's very easy to kind of go in there and say, hey, let me throw in like a motion blur or something, throw in texture and whatnot, and, you know, hope for the best. You know, you can throw in a little bit of motion blur. Hey, look at that, I have clouds now. And then I can go in there and mess with the edges, all that kind of stuff. But I really want to figure out how things are reading. So right now, I could probably move this mountain over like that. So that way it actually kind of leads our eye in there. I like what's going on here, so it kind of moves our eye. So I'm thinking I want a third one. And I feel like that third one could be could be visually interesting, like personally. And so I don't want to create that negative space in my mind. I don't want that negative space in there because it's kind of distracting. So I'm wondering if now we begin to say, hey, let's create a little more of an overlap or something with this shape. So maybe instead we don't have this go like too far over. So it kind of puts it like, it kind of creates like a little overlap, kind of like that. Maybe that's what we're looking for. That's possibly, like, I'm not sure. So like now I'm kind of in the point where now I kind of have to make decisions in terms of like painting, in terms of like how do I want this to work. So with the lighting, if I get rid of the moon, I can now fake lighting. So this is kind of interesting now, because if I want to like do something like this, I could go in there and, whoops. All right, I can now play with lighting ideas that will help, you know, make the piece feel visually interesting. Like maybe that one is like lit up, and then, you know what I mean? Like I can even make it like softer or something. Maybe this one is completely in light or something. Maybe that's why that one shows up. Or what I would do is I would probably just make this one mostly in light. So that way it kind of creates like, so we're using that idea of contrast right there. So maybe this idea of contrast is what's going to help sell this piece, with light kind of coming across. We can make up a light source there. So there we go. We can now push that in there. We can now start worrying about depth. So maybe I can move the distort tool right there. So again, I haven't really painted yet. I'm still kind of working on the distortion right there. So we're looking at scale, depth, light. So we're working on the scale, working on the depth, working on the light, and we're just moving and scaling and rotating things as far as we can in order to get the piece to look where we want it to look. So the next thing is depth. Right now what I'm on is like depth. What can we do with depth? And right now this seems to be kind of like an imbalance. It seems to be very much on the left side. So I can begin kind of looking at some of those smaller shapes here and seeing what I can do to kind of help create some more just visual interest, if that makes sense. So, okay. And stop me or let me know if this is like going completely over your head, or you're like, this sounds stupid, like what are you talking about? Or if this is actually helping you. If it's not, then I'll try to do something else. But this is just how I would go about it. Like if I'm kind of making my own like piece, I try to be very like fundamentally sound about it. Like I try to make sure I always like paint with a lot of intent, where everything that's placed, every rock, every like little angle is like really well thought out and like isn't on accident. I try not to have happy accidents if I can avoid it. I don't like like sometimes you want happy accidents because it just creates a little bit more of a flavor to it, but I want to make sure that if I'm putting something down, that everything is well thought out, so that when I go and when I add detail, that now like I have a lot more confidence in myself that it's going to look good, because I really thought out like every possible like outcome, and I've thought of all my elements. I've thought of how I'm going to use it. So it's a very more, I don't want to say scientific method, because I don't think it's like science in a way, because art can be scientific in a way, but I don't think that's how you want to approach it. But I think this way it helps me not get overwhelmed, because sometimes, like in terms of doing an environment, I feel like environments are very, very overwhelming because there's a lot of things you have to balance. By doing it this way, it then makes it easier to then go into colors to go do stuff like that. You know what I mean? So now if I really want to go into colors, you know, I can just fill it with the color and say, hey, that's the color that I want to use. That's the color that I want to use. Going into color really isn't that hard and per se to me, and just like, you know, you just put it in there and you just start going. Especially if you already have a color palette already kind of like picked out. So then you can begin to, why is this color not matching up? It's interesting. Oh, it's because you have the noise, that's why. There you go. And you can begin to kind of work this out little by little. But what I want to focus on is just the overall composition here, and just making sure that everything is good. So I don't think the texture or the actual painting is what gives me the issue. I'm just wondering, like, the overall foundation of the environment, like, is that the best it can be? And so that's where I'm like, I don't think this area is like the juice, you know? And a good way you can also kind of like think about it too is like draw like a mini composition. This is what I always do. Is just do this, like zoom in and then alt backspace and kind of look at it that way. And like, is that like a sexy composition? Kinda. Like, I'm wondering if like we could figure out some things to maybe make this more balanced. Right there, like, is that a sexy composition? Like right here. I mean, luckily the values work, so that way you can still feel a foreground, middle ground, background. But then overall, like, sometimes in certain places it gets kind of like not so great. So when I look at like this, you know, there seems to be a certain level of like overall detail that I can get behind. Not saying this is better or per se or anything like that, but there is kind of a visual interest. So what I am doing is when I am painting something like this, I am trying to look and see like what is working and what's not working. So that's a good way to kind of test yourself, is to kind of look at it. And already, like, as I'm looking at this, I'm already seeing like things that aren't going to work, which would obviously be the values. So the value structure is kind of weird here, meaning that I have to go in there and you know, do that first for starters, and then that would solve this from looking super jank. But then that makes me wonder, like, maybe I put the moon right here or something. I mean, that could be a possible answer, that if I move this here, let's see, where's the moon? Right, maybe I make it like super small. Alright, like that could start to be kind of the questions that you can begin to kind of ask yourself. And again, I have no clue whether this is like the right answer or not. But it's stuff that you do eventually want to start, like, this is kind of like how in depth I really think about it when I'm trying to work it out in the very beginning. So hopefully that gives you some answers on where, like, on how you should want to approach it, or how approaching it this way will guarantee that, like, as you begin to add detail, the foundations will kind of like still hold up. And I forgot to add this part in front of it too, which was the cool. So that might help it actually too, if I kind of look into it, which it kind of does actually. Kind of just go, you know, little by little. So yeah, that's my critique in terms of like maybe some things you can do if you were to try it again. And it doesn't take that long too to really kind of operate in this manner. And I really kind of like zoom out too when I'm doing it. I literally kind of like take my pieces and I'm just kind of moving stuff around. I'm kind of rotating. Like, I'm not trying to paint like as much as possible, which sounds really dumb in theory, but like it does really help you like really focus on just a graphic composition in terms of what works. Now where this theory kind of comes from, something that I created a long time ago called Comp Weekly. So in Comp Weekly, and maybe I'll get back to doing this actually. Comp Weekly is the idea of how do we create interesting compositions without painting, without just organizing stuff. And this idea came from like me using Legos in class when I teach class. That if you give everyone the same shapes, right? Because everyone, like, not everyone's gonna have access to Octane and like crazy models that someone sold online, or like, you know, kit bashing and all these kind of 3D programs. People have access to that. Some people don't. Some people know how to use these programs. Some people don't. Some people don't have access to crazy textures. But what's funny is I feel like whenever you strip all that shit away and you just give people like just this, you can really see like who knows what they're doing and who doesn't know what they're doing. Because when you can't hide behind that stuff and everyone literally has the same tools, like everyone has 3 squares, 3 circles, whatever, who can make a cool composition, you can really see like who really has like strong, in my opinion, fundamentals. It's not always the case, but this can always help out. So the thing about Comp Weekly is you take these ideas, and the thing about it too is that you don't have to use everything. So maybe one time you do want to use something, and one time you don't want to use something. So again, I always say like the idea of like power. Power is like knowing how to use the tool, and wisdom is knowing like when not to use it. So like power means like, yeah, I can use all these things, but the wisdom is knowing when to use what and when not to use what. So if I'm making a composition here, it's like, okay, well, what kind of composition can I make based off of these shapes? And so when I give this assignment to people, it's actually really, really fun because they can't really like get too crazy with something. All they can really do, again, is use a transform tool to make something bigger or smaller. And what I used to do is I used to give different shapes every week, and I would say make something. And so like that's all you can do. And it's kind of cool to see what people can do in terms of creating depth, just with like simple shapes like this. And it's a really good thing that helped me kind of break this thing down. And so let's see, maybe I'll just do this guy. You know what? And you learn about proportions here, in my opinion. You learn about proportions like overlap, like height, contrast, all these different ideas that should, in theory, like make a good composition. So that's why I like to kind of do this. And so you really begin to kind of be very meticulous about where you're placing something. Like, you know, is this too big? Is it too small? Is it too far to the right? Is it too far to the left? And you begin to kind of just make design edit changes, but you're not painting anything yet. You're kind of just like doing stuff like just very, very like in a very, very simple manner. And understanding like, okay, maybe I don't need this. Maybe this is all I need for contrast. Maybe I don't need this right there. And then eventually, once you start getting more confident with it, then you can start to say, hey, you know what? I'm gonna add like actual gradation to it. So maybe instead now I start doing like, you know, boom, gradations and stuff like that. And start going, okay, now I'm gonna start maybe lighting something up. And that's the next level, right? Of course, is like adding in all these different ideas of like texture and stuff like that. So it's always like shape, value, pattern, texture. This is literally just focusing on shapes. So people that have said like, hey, Kalen, you have good shapes. You know, why do you have good shapes? This is like the reason why I think that I have good shapes. I have no clue if I really do or not, but this is kind of how I like to think about it. So now if we kind of take this idea right here of doing a comp weekly and then apply it to here, hopefully you can see that if we kind of zoom out, that now we're just kind of focusing just on like the simple stuff. And then over time, once you like get this like set to where you want it, now you can go in and begin to kind of edit and start to go, okay, I'm feeling confident. Now I can go in here and make little changes and add stuff, add more angles, add all these kind of different things that will make the piece either feel more three-dimensional or more visually interesting. But that core is still there when you start to detail it. So that's where you'd want to work that out. Okay. So hopefully that makes sense. So pretty much like in theory or in conclusion, my idea is just to kind of really break it down to its core. And the more you can break down the composition to its core, the more you can figure out like what's working and what's not working. So like right here in particular, I don't think that's working, and so I would get rid of it. But then the problem is that creates another problem, because now we have that negative space right there, and then now we have more problems. And then again, you start to go back and forth, trying to figure out, you know, how do I make this thing read better? Cool. Hopefully that helps on that point. By the way, if anyone wants to chime in on that, you can always chime in if you feel like it's not making sense. Or anything like that. I'm always down to hear people think about that. Cool. So if that's the case, I'll save this and I'll give you a link to download it later, so that you can access it. Does that work? So I'll actually save it. Save it in your in my Twitch folder. Feedback, cool. And I'll give you a link to that later. But I think the biggest thing that can actually help you is just writing out your assets, like writing out your elements. I call them elements. Writing out your elements, and then writing out like what you would like to use. So like these words are kind of like design principles. The more you can kind of figure out what you're trying to go for, I think the better. So good talk, bro. Good talk. Next one. Someone asked. We'll see how far we can get. It is 7:48. Eventually, I will maybe start going longer, but in the meantime, so is Fernando Gomez here, because he posted something. And if you are here, I guess you can just write in the chat, I guess, in the Facebook chat. I think he's on Facebook right now. So if you are here, you can type something in. In the meantime, anyone else watching, if you had questions about just the overall approach, I will do my best to answer that. But Fernando Gomez, you are next. But if you are not here, then I will go back to my painting that I was working on. But I am curious to see what he was working on. This is interesting. Got it. Huh. Really interesting look and feel. Colors feel a little weird though. Cool. Alright. So we will wait. So I do see one a minute ago. Hey Kalen. So that must mean that he is there. Mr. Fernando Gomez. Looks like you are from Brazil. Welcome. Wow, you're getting international up in here. All my friends are like in Brazil right now. Josh Singh is in Brazil. All those people working at that company. They're all like killing it out there. Okay, then let us get started. So you have this piece here. Let me cut this out. Go here. Let me do this. So the texture looks okay, but I think the lighting is very interesting. Yeah, I'm curious the problems that you're having with this, because there's some things that are kind of throwing me off, and I'm wondering, it seems like a lighting issue, if anything. Lighting and perspective, I had to guess. Is that glass? Okay, I guess it is glass. Yeah, this seems to be like a perspective issue, if I had to guess. In terms of like overlap, and then not using like a thicker brush, especially like in this area. You have lines, but then we get some of this stuff in here, and we're losing a lot of the... We're not painting with the hard brush, and I think a lot of this stuff, like, we're not really understanding heat. Let me paint. So I'll let him write his spiel before we get started. If he is here, I'll wait a couple minutes and see what he's writing down. But I think there are some things here. I think a lot of it is things get very, very muddy here, and you want things that are architectural. Just a good rule of thumb is like just use a harder brush when you're making something that's architectural. I think when you do that, it just makes it that much easier to kind of like create a nice mask, and then you can kind of fill that in and like make stuff. And then also like layering, I think is really important. If you have a good layering system when it comes to architectural stuff, it will make your life a lot easier when you're painting that. So we'll wait, see what he has to say. If he is here, then we'll let him seek his piece of just telling me what this piece is about, what you're trying to go for, and then we'll talk about it. In the meantime, we can get back to painting. Let's see what we got going. Sorry, there's a little bit of a delay too on my end. So back to clouds. Who likes clouds? I do. And if you did submit something and we don't get to it, we'll try to get to it the following week. No promises, but you may also have to resubmit. So that's also an issue as well. Whatever my wife is making upstairs, it smells really good. Oh, okay. I'm sampling from my old painting here. I'll go back to this brush. I do like some of these shapes too that are like happening here. Really cool. So maybe I can recreate some of these. But also probably needs to be a little more darker. I'm curious on what shapes are happening here that have like these interesting. I really like this, and I really like that. Let's actually Control J and bring these over here. Like, I would like to see if it's possible to recreate these shapes. Yes, I am using a mixer brush to blend the clouds. I don't actually usually ever do that. Normally I just kind of paint it and blend it out, but there was a one that I had that was like a cotton, called the Cotton Blender. I think it was from John Park's series, by the way. I don't know where I got it from. I think it was from John Park, if I had to guess. But it's actually really interesting. Like like how it works, how it blends things out. So I dig it. Why it's not working right now, I have no clue. Did I do something? Let's see. Why isn't it working now? Did I fuck up? Okay, that is the cloud. Let me go back to a brush first. Let's paint it. Wait. Oh, I probably had a selection. That's why. Yeah, I had a selection. Yeah, so normally I would just blend it in manually, but it has a nice kind of flow to it, and it seems to be working out. Normally I would just use a softer brush, like a brush like this, and that's how I would begin to kind of blend edges. It gives me a little bit more control, in my opinion, to like kind of do it that way, and it kind of creates like this wispiness, you know, to kind of, it creates like this nice like overall like, I don't know. It creates like a nice softness to it that you don't normally get when you mix the brush. But I think there's probably a place for the mixer brush, honestly, in this. I think a lot of people do use it. I purposely just don't for the most part, just because I feel like it kind of makes my stuff look too much like the same. So I kind of like to build my own texture if I can. So I'm very much one that likes to make my own shapes, as opposed to it kind of being too random, I guess. So okay, cool. So the man himself has responded. So Fernando says, supposed to be a hall for university-like building. I'm not sure how to improve the light. I feel like the materials are feeling off too. I want to know how you can improve the interior designs in general. Yeah, so it seems like I don't think that this. Well, I would probably get more reference for one. I don't think there's an issue with some of like the architecture. I think it's the execution more so than anything, and also like your connections. So like usually around like trim is always like really really important. So like when you have something like this, like normally you'd have some kind of like interesting trim that can help make it look a little more cooler. So like always kind of think about the material. So like if this is going to that center right area right there, I would think about maybe changing the material to something else. So maybe the material here is like a different kind of marble or something like that, and that will help kind of make the piece feel a little bit more visually interesting. And then find ways to kind of like make the connections from the ground to the pillar like feel very visually interesting. Like a part of me wonders if you really, how much reference you really got for this piece, because it doesn't seem like you're really, at least really thinking about it. So let's actually bring in an example. So I always use the Alani Hotel, 'cause that's where we stay a lot. Interior lobby. Cool. So in the Alani Hotel, I'm trying to get a good shot here. Sorry. Toby.
Same place you're at when I left today.
Relax.
Did you move it all?
Stop it. Okay, sorry. Let's look at. Here's a good example of like interesting design. Sorry, I'm trying to find like a good example of. So I'm on my other screen right now, by the way. So that's what I'm doing here, and my goal here is to find like all the interesting things that happen in a piece. And cool, you know what? This one might work actually. Open a new tab. Maybe not. Let me do it this way. Settings, tools, large. So sorry, I'm trying to find a large image that we can look at that will give us some examples of all the different things that are happening. This one seems to be working, so let's do this one. Open image in a new tab. Cool. All right. So Alani Hotel. The reason why I like this place, well, one, it's where I got married and stuff. But in terms of a design, it's actually like really, really visually interesting. And so a lot of it is like connections, and I think that's what your piece is lacking in terms of a design, is the connection. So like whenever you want to do architecture, what I always try to do is find some architecture that you like and really break down the proportions here. So let's just break down like one piece of this environment, like right here, and why it looks cool to me. So if we were to look at this, and I'm gonna put in like another layer behind it. Hold on a second. Sorry, it's really cold in here. I gotta turn off the air conditioning in my house because my feet are freaking freezing. First world problems. Okay, it's off anyway. Okay, so what I do like to do is I kind of just lower the opacity like that. And let's evaluate like what a piece is doing in general. Okay, so this pillar right here is fairly interesting. I'm gonna draw a shape around it. So I try to use like 3 colors, like primary, secondary, tertiary. Okay, so the primary shape of this guy looks like this. Alright, that's the primary shape of this piece. Like that, right? That's a fairly simple shape, and you kind of already have that going on. What makes it more interesting now is the secondary shape, and we'll make this blue. Secondary shape that's kind of happening here is like right there. and that feels relatively interesting. In terms of the proportion, if we were to kind of measure that out, it kind of measures at the third, if we're thinking of like how this piece is. And then the tertiary shape would then be this piece right here. And I'll just kind of do that, right? And then obviously like the extra little piece, like the payoff is right there. So that's a little extra piece right there. In terms of connections, we have two things coming in here. We have one awning right there. That's a small piece that then creates a little bit of a piece right there. We have two awnings, which then creates a little triptych painting right there. So there's always kind of interesting proportion things. And you can see that kind of how it reads right there. And the same pillar that we have from right here to right there, as you get to the bottom, what happens, there's actually a little bit of like a taper there. Like that. And so that's interesting, the tapering that's happening, and all these little pieces, all these proportions that are happening, right? We can see the proportions right here, right there. We can see primary, tertiary, secondary shapes. You know, what is your primary graphic reads here? And so these are all kind of secondary shapes, but then kind of leads us to this guy right here, this big giant shape right there. Like there's all these little things happening that make this piece, that makes the architecture look really, really good. Not to mention that as you get over here in this corner, the actual floor changes to a different material. So you want to think about the material indication too. So if we break all that stuff down, right, and then we look at yours in general, there's a lot of things missing in terms of like really breaking down primary, secondary, tertiary shapes. It's kind of just like all one thing everywhere, and there isn't much variation. So that's the first thing I would say. Like if you want your stuff to kind of really like read better, that's what I would really kind of think of, is look at more architecture to really figure out like how do you want stuff to kind of read. Sorry, my coworker is messaging me and he's asking me if we are playing soccer tomorrow, and the answer is yes, Scott. Do zebras have stripes? The answer is yes, zebras do have stripes. Or zebras. Anyways, so that's the first thing I would do, okay? So think about that in terms of like how you're gonna blend stuff in. Second thing is your execution in terms of breaking stuff down. What you could do too, what I would do is I would do a top-down view. A top-down view is really, really great for architectural people. I learned from an interior designer. And so what you could technically do in theory is like draw out your space and really draw from the top and think about what you want to have. So you kind of have like the circle thing here. It looks like there's like three pieces, and just see how it feels like in terms of like a lobby area. Think of where you want the tables to be, and just think about the overall space. Like this is really important. So then you can really figure out like even if you want something to face that way. So maybe right, these are all facing like perpendicular. Maybe you want those pillars to be kind of facing outward or something like that. You know what I mean? That could be important too. And maybe these pillars are kind of going in a different direction. So drawing it from the top down will make your life a little bit easier. And then, in theory, what you could do is that if you actually take that top down and you actually distort it, and let's say I was doing it to kind of match your piece right here, it actually saves you trouble because now you actually know where to draw stuff out, and you don't have to worry about the proportions, which is actually really, really fun way to do things. So you could actually kind of go here, make sure things line up in terms of like the foreground, middle ground, background, or sorry, the perspective. Background, what am I doing? If I draw this straight up, now if I wanted to, I could actually just connect the dots. This is a really easy way to kind of like figure out where something's going to be sitting in perspective. And then you can actually, which is actually really great about this, is now you can figure out the overlap. You can actually see, hey, it's kind of overlapping. And then that makes it a little bit easier to understand the proportions of something. So that means that if I were to draw your table right here that you had over here, like depending on how high I want to do it, right, it's going to work that out. And then maybe this piece right here is going to have not that much overlap, but, you know, Like I can break down that shape a little bit more, and it will help kind of just give it a little bit more of a three-dimensional feeling. That's one way you can approach it. Second thing is, as you're drawing stuff, layers are your best friend, especially when it comes to architectural stuff. I would always encourage you to separate stuff whenever possible. So, for example, if I am drawing this super complex shape here, I would have at least like 3 different layers, like personally. So once you get the shape down, I'm just kind of drawing this, like, I'm just trying to look at your piece right now. I'm just trying to like fudge it. I would have 2 things right now. So again, this is where that breaking down like a piece of architecture is like really, really important here, because where is this? Right? Breaking this stuff down will help you figure out how many layers you would need in order to actually paint something, like in general. So if I were to actually like paint this guy right here, I would think about how many layers I would need. So I would draw the base. I would get that as close as I can for that matching perspective. So perspective is really, really important here, obviously, because if it's off by a little bit, it's really easy to tell. So I do want to kind of like take my time here and make sure it all lines up. But with that though, I would separate as much as possible. So I would also separate this guy right here, which is that piece. I'll make it a little bit lighter so I can see it. So that's another piece right there. Okay, so we have that. Then we have another piece right here, which would be your moon. Okay, your moon. And then I would I'd probably make another piece right here, just for the sake of argument. Okay. This is gonna look like not good because I'm not making this 100% exact, but you'll see like why this can be super helpful later on, in my opinion at least. Okay. And we'll then do another piece on the top, which is like your base, I guess. Cool, right? So this is extremely freaking tedious, by the way. It sucks to do it. I'm not gonna lie. It sucks, but it will make the result a lot stronger, and it makes it easier to separate things. So the second thing I would do is I would also make a new layer for lighting. So right now your lighting is over here. I would actually separate that lighting. Why? Because I can totally tell like you're putting a shape and it muddies up because you're making a stroke and you probably go too far. You gotta get another stroke to then fix that stroke, and all these problems begin to happen, and then the next thing you know, you've wasted like an hour of your day like trying to like make the shape look sharp. But if you just separate it from the beginning onto its own layer, well then your life just becomes that much more easier. Why is that? Because then you can lock the transparency, and then you can just paint what you want. So this isn't going to be like the most accurate thing in the world, but I'll show you what I mean. So I'll probably just do that or something. Cool. Then from there, I can now begin to figure out all this other stuff that I want to figure out. Okay, so What's cool about this, what makes it a little bit easier, is that now if I want to create gradations, I don't have to worry about like painting stuff. So if I want to grab this value, I can just sample it, lock the transparency, drag upward, right? And now I don't have to worry about like painting over that wrong area. I can go to that area, I can lock the transparency, and you see how much easier it is to actually like put down stuff. So even if I wanted to do texture, like that makes my life way easier because now I can actually like create like I can draw to the form. I don't have to sit there and worry every single time about like making the wrong stroke, going too far, all that stuff. It's all there. It's way easier. Same thing right here. I can go to the shape that I want to, and I can say, oh, you know what? I want this to be darker on this side. Well, again, you see how much more easier that is to kind of make that happen because of the fact that everything is like separated. It just makes your life that much more easier to kind of just make changes, which normally with architectural stuff, you're always going to make certain changes because you're going to find things that you like, find things that you don't like. So this makes my life way easier to kind of build off of it and then get more like depth to the painting and make sure that it feels like more three-dimensional as I'm painting. So layers are going to be your best friend. And I can tell you're not using it just because of like how messy things are. And architectural stuff usually has to be clean in general. So then I would also then make another layer for this guy right here, probably link it to it. And then from there, I would then draw that shape, and then you have everything you need. You can turn it off, you can move it, you can change the color, you can do whatever you want. And then after you're done, then you can kind of go in there and then make changes in terms of texture, make it feel softer, make it feel lighter, all that kind of stuff. It's all up to you. You just have a lot more power and control with that. And then now, like for instance right here, how much more easier is that to paint? You know, because I don't have to sit there and worry about painting over that area. I can just sit there and, you know, do that. You see what I'm saying? Like, it makes it way easier to control something because we have layers. I mean, back in the day, you had to kind of draw it like straight up, right, with pencil and paper. You don't have to do that anymore. You got Photoshop, so use it to your advantage. That will make your life a lot easier as you're moving forward. And hopefully that makes sense. Nice. Sorry, my coworker's telling me that he has a Hawaiian shirt for tomorrow. Makes me really happy because we started something called Aloha Fridays at work, where I wear Aloha shirts, and I have the best Aloha shirts in the game. In San Mateo, in the city of San Mateo, and now people are up in their game. I like it. So let me know if that makes sense. But that's some things that I would highly kind of encourage you to do. So the first thing is more reference, really understanding like what makes good architecture. Second, doing a top-down version of all this stuff, so it will help you kind of really understand the proportion and the spacing. And 3, more layers. If you use more layers, you can already see how much more sharper that will look, and it will make your life a little bit easier. And 3, tapering. Really kind of think about how the space should work and think about material. Last thing I would also say too is when it comes to using light, I think you need to understand heat better. So heat in general, a quick little tidbit of what I was taught, is that heat works in this direction right here. Right now, your heat it's yellow and then it's like orange, and there isn't much of like a good gradation there. Like all your stuff is like hella color dodgy for whatever reason, and it doesn't look good. Heat usually goes from an orange to a white, so if you want to use heat, especially if something like that shouldn't be that bright, you want to start like in like the lower orangey kind of colors right here, and then as you go up, you'll want to go like in that color, that color. Like, yellow shouldn't be the first color that you see when it comes to this kind of stuff. Just because it's like, that means that it's like super, super hot and super, super bright. And I imagine that kind of stuff would blind you. So you probably want to operate like in this range first, before you kind of get to these like super bright yellow colors that are like in here. It's kind of a mustard color too. You want to go more in the orange kind of color. So In general, like if you are trying to convey light or like a solid light, like you could probably kind of work your way into like something like that. Be a little bit less. And if the light is, you know, somewhat dark or I guess like a dim light, you know. You might get a little bit of like that in there, but it should be relatively soft. That's kind of how I go about it. So if you can, like, dim your lights in your house and like see what happens, and that might give you some good ideas. And then obviously you want to try to avoid like pure white if you can, because that means like that thing is like hot and it's like a super bright light, which means like there would be like no shadows in the place. Something that bright. So try to avoid like super dark and super light values when you can. Try to work in between the middle. So like if this is like your spectrum right here of like light to dark values, and like here's your pure 100% white. You don't want to be too dark and you don't want to be too light. Trying to find like a good range to work in will always help you out. So like something like from here, like I do like the 80-20 range, like something like right from there to there. And then like when you really need something to really kind of stand out, then you can kind of sample from this area right there, or sample from this area right there. But normally you're going to want to work, in general you're going to want to work like even less than that. The more you can limit your value structure, I think the stronger the piece will be. And then you can just use some of these pieces whenever you need to. Cool. Let me know if you have any questions about that. I can say that and give you guys a link later. Just message me and I'll give you the link. But those are some things that I would think about when it comes to architecture. And also, go out and draw architecture. If you're from Brazil, which I think, there should be some dope places for you to go sketch. Go out and draw stuff. That's a great way. Go out and draw buildings around you and buildings that you know, and that will give you a really good idea of like how you're breaking down proportions and stuff like that. So, with that said, I think I've gone well over time, and I think we've had a pretty good time as well. Again, we'll be on next next Tuesday. So Tuesdays and Thursdays are trying to be the times that I like. If you do have suggestions, please leave them in the chat of like times that do work for you. So I'm always up to hear like what works. But Tuesdays will usually be painting. Thursdays will usually be feedback. So that's kind of my gift to you guys now that I'm kind of just chilling at work and stuff like that and just doing my thing at Glue. I want to get back into more streaming and stuff like that. I will be at Lightblocks Expo in September. If you are going to be there, come say hi. And yeah, if you have any suggestions of what you'd like to see, that's always good. I haven't streamed in a while. I used to stream all the time back in the day, and I'm slowly getting back into it. It's all like new to me. And you can go from there. Chemopause says, hey Kaylin, maybe you can put the schedule of your Twitch channel on your profile page? Yes, that would be a good idea. Maybe I can put it on my Facebook thingy, I guess, right? It's like my yeah, I can definitely update this crap, whatever that is, and make a Tuesday Thursday situation. But I do want to figure out the times though first. Once I figure out the set time, then we're good, because the times may possibly change as we go through this. But yeah, that will definitely happen. So yeah. So thank you guys so much. I appreciate it. I'm probably gonna go have dinner with my wife and hang out with my dog and play some Advance Wars. Thank you so much for showing up. Hopefully I'll see you guys here back Tuesday. Again, just message me or whatever if you have any thoughts or things you want to see, requests. I'm always down. I have no idea what I want this to be yet, to be honest. Like, it's been a while since I've streamed, so I have no clue what I want to do with it or why I'm doing it, but I just feel like more engaging with the community and painting and just practicing myself and trying to up my skills while I can, which is always good for me at work and then my freelance and then just in life. So thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it, everyone that came by. Yeah, thanks everyone in the Twitch, everyone in the Facebook, And yeah, I will see you guys later. Take care. So Kathy, thank you for coming by. Thanks Kaibok. Thanks Tease Renan, and Fernando for showing some stuff out. I appreciate you guys putting yourself out there. Feel free to leave your art handles in the Twitch chat. Please connect with each other. That's always important too. Don't be afraid to make new friends here on my stream. So don't be afraid to share your work and make new friends. Yeah, please do that. Okay, all right, guys. I will see you guys later. Take care, and as always, peace out.